Hello and welcome to Media7. I'm Russell Brown. In this week's show, we'll survey Auckland's first super city election campaign. But first, there was far more than local news from another city. But if you watch the foreign news, it might have been another planet.
New Zealand is in a state of emergency. The infrastructure damage is widespread. Many buildings caught fire and burst water mains, submerging entire villages.
And in New Zealand tonight, there will be a curfew after reports that the mood in this city is, quote, frantic.
There has been a huge, a huge earthquake in Christchurch, New Zealand.
The city of Christchurch remains in lockdown.
We had no idea what was in store for us, just another day last week.
We're going to shut down the CBD, and that's something that we're working through now. That'll be part of one of our next meetings. Actually have water in this area, guys? Can anyone tell me, do we have water pressure here? Okay. Is there any way we can just check that?
Is it odd that suddenly you've gone from full-on campaign mode to earthquake mode?
Absolutely strange, and the thought of even campaigning now feels repugnant.
What about the comparison to Rudy Giuliani?
Oh, it's just embarrassing for me, to be honest.
That was, of course, Christchurch Mayor Bob Parker in his already famous orange jacket. Mayor Parker was also compared this week by Newstalk ZB's Leighton Smith to Winston Churchill and John F. Kennedy. Whether that's a rational statement or not, Mayor Parker's public performance has not done his re-election chances any harm. It also indicates, as the new Greater Auckland prepares for its own elections, what the big job could require. We sent Jose Barbosa out into the campaign badlands.
It's a sleepy Sunday and Auckland is biding its time until it becomes a consolidated entity. And swarming over the city are the local government candidates, racing to pick the bone clean of votes.
And they're doing it here at the Coatesville Market, a kind of anti-mall haven for the bourgeois and their stupid dogs. Not you though, mate. You're okay, eh? Love you. Love you very much.
You've really got to be out there. You've got to say hello. How are you? How are you this morning? You're keeping up with the election, and if they still don't want to talk to you, well, you just let them drift by. But morning. Good morning.
Do you want a sausage?
Alas, only a few candidates can achieve true campaign glam. Like this Mayoral quiz, apparently designed to have mayoral candidates Len Brown and John Banks perform for their supper, like dancing rhesus monkeys. Although Banks looked like he'd just been told his dog had been run over. Politics is about banging away like a jackhammer in the hope your audience gets so numbed it digs out its own brain and hands it over.
It's about consistent, decisive leadership, and it's about consistent and decisive leadership around some very tough decisions. It's about stability, decisions made with a lot of stability. It's about doing the right thing and doing things right. The more mistakes I've made in the past, but make no mistake, I don't tend to make the same mistake twice.
Or you could just reduce your message down until you sound like a greeting card medley.
You can't fool the fly. I'd far rather be on the front foot than the back foot, but you can't prep for heart. And that's what I'm giving the people.
And going the extra mile to get every last vote.
I'll do anything for a vote, mate.
You held back a little bit, which is cool. I'm down with that.
Okay.
No,
was that 3 taps? I'm not gay.
Halfway through the evening, a strange nausea came over me. I'd unwittingly contracted the dreaded door knocker's disease. A frequent complaint of reporters, manhandled by political hopefuls. The symptoms include dementia.
This is my jacket.
And spasms of the face. Fortunately, my recovery was rapid, but I had to wonder, would Auckland be as lucky?
Jose Barbosa there, and that dog really did like him. I'm joined now by Metro editor Simon Wilson, broadcaster and commentator Efiso Collins, humorist and cyclist David Slack, and the creative director of Young and Rubicon, Vaughan Davis. Welcome to you all, gentlemen.
Hi.
Now, Simon, you wrote the profiles of Brown and Banks in the new issue of Metro.
Right, yep.
Did anything of what you wrote constitute an endorsement for either of them?
No, we haven't endorsed either candidate. We think both of them have some good things going for them, but on the whole, we don't think Auckland is being presented with a mayor, a mayoral hopeful this time around, who really has risen to the occasion of the new super city.
Which is what everyone's saying. What impact do you think that's had on the campaign and perceptions of the election campaign, that the candidate's shortcomings are basically what everyone's
Well,
talking
you know,
about?
we put the two mayors in designer frocks. That's actually probably quite a good way of summing up a popular feeling, and it does seem to have struck a chord. You couldn't do that with genuinely popular people. And it's not that either of those is necessarily going to fail. It could be that I think either of them have the potential to rise, but they haven't shown it yet. They still haven't shown that they have.
And they're running out of time, frankly.
They are running out of time.
Ifiso, would it be fair to say the campaign looks different in South Auckland?
Oh, it looks very different in South Auckland. You know, on TV you've got two, I guess, middle-class white men who are on the campaign trail all the time. But out south, especially in the seat where I'm from, in Manuka, we've got a whole heap of Pacific people who are standing, and there's a whole lot of talk, especially amongst Labour people, about the vote being split. And I think that's a really interesting case at the moment. That's not being reported in the media, that there are some people in South Auckland who are keen to be part of this democratic process and have said to, you know, we're going to stand for office. But that's not being covered in mainstream media. And I guess the big issue out south is that we're encouraging people to actually get on the list, on the roll, so that they can vote.
This is what I've heard, yeah, that the campaign is much more focused on enrolment rather than any particular candidate.
Yeah, and PacificEyewitness.com, which is the site which has covered a lot of this, has been talking about how the candidates aren't even out saying, here, vote for me. They're just asking people, are you enrolled to vote? Do you remember the orange person who you see on TV now and then? And it's important that people actually get enrolled to vote. And I think, you know, there's a lot of commentary around if anyone out south, or if Len Brown at least has the support of South Auckland, he's going to have to get people to vote. And I think that's the big challenge for those people out in South Auckland.
I think that's a big challenge for the left in Auckland. Yeah. David Slack, how's the coverage looked from Devonport?
See, we've had a mayor for the last 3 years who has been astonishing in the dissent and unhappiness he's created in his council. And yet you see him in these debates and you think, this is the perfect candidate. He's been remarkable. And I speak of Andrew Williams, of course. And he knows what he's talking about. He's specific, he's precise. He can tell you what in quite some detail he will do and what has been done. And you think, boy, this could be a mayor. But we know what it's been like these last 3 years, and we know that that would be a very, very bad idea.
Because, speaking of coverage, you were at the debate staged by World TV, the Chinese TV station, which sounds like it was an extremely serious effort.
Well, it was really worthwhile, and the campaigns have found that some of the niche stations have been following them around assiduously and been quite determined to make sure that their audience gets to be fully briefed. Now, this World TV show went for 2 hours with minimal breaks and had 6 of the mayoral candidates, and they were taken through a roster of questions and given sufficient time to give you an idea of what they thought. For me and the 3 other people who were there as people representing the sectional interests, I was there advocating for transport, it was fascinating to spend 2 hours seeing these people in close confines and seeing the measure of the candidates. And you saw that Banks, for example, was thin-skinned and aggressive. You saw that Brown was quite capable of taking a left field question and dealing with it well. But you saw Williams looking remarkable. And that tells you 2 things. One is that television can really deceive, but the other is that if you give enough time, you can get something quite worthwhile out of the candidates, and we haven't had a lot of that yet.
That's interesting, and I think that there are a few media organisations guilty of not taking it with that degree of seriousness. Vaughan, you're the marketing guy. We have seen at the national level edgy, innovative campaigns, particularly over the last couple of general elections. Why haven't we seen anything like that in Auckland? Because the billboards are very boring.
The billboards are very, very boring. A week ago I would have described this electoral campaign at an advertising level as being about as interesting as a slow Saturday in Christchurch. But I've had to revise that metaphor in light of recent events. I think the 2 main candidates, yes, they are as boring as batshit, but I think that's deliberate. I think Banks is, and we saw him fail to do a couple of times in the clip, is just trying not to embarrass himself. And that's a strategy for winning it.
And I wonder, that's been the strategy from the beginning with Banks.
Absolutely,
not saying anything silly.
Absolutely, and it's all been very vague, and it's all been give me the job and I'll get the job done without ever really defining what the job is. So there's a bit of a gap there. I think Brown, quite rightly, has been focusing on enrolment. If all he achieves in this campaign is getting those, typically younger, browner, poorer, is the shorthand for people who don't vote, for better or worse. If he can get that group more engaged in the political process, so they might vote for him and he might not win, but they might vote in the next election, they might vote in the next general election, I think he'll have done a great thing. I think the interesting stuff in the campaign's been at the fringe. People like your Rob Thomas with his, he's a cyclist, so he got my attention riding my bike. I see a billboard on Ponsonby Road saying, hit the Bluetooth button. I hit the Bluetooth button and nothing happened, but he gave it a go. You've got Simon Prast, God knows where he gets his energy from, but he's on Facebook 24 hours a day, engaging.
Brighton's funny as hell.
Yeah, exactly. The sort of wackies on the corner. But the mainstream candidates are doing a mainstream job, and there's nothing very exciting.
Simon, do you think if there had been a silver-tongued candidate, perhaps without the personal baggage that some of them have, that person would have waltzed in?
No, I don't. I don't think people vote quite in that way. And I think Vaughan is absolutely right. Those leading candidates know that by playing it down the middle, that is the way to get them the big bulk of votes, so that's why they're doing it. Yeah.
You had an interesting phrase in your editorial that Auckland is suffering a crisis of public confidence, and to some degree over the manner in which the super city has been created by Rodney Hyde.
Yeah.
Has that had, again, an effect on perceptions of the campaign? Has it turned people off it?
Well, I think it probably has. I think it's served the interests of the Minister, Rodney Hyde, to be antagonistic in the way in which he's presented this proposal for the new city, because it makes him look like a strong voice on the right of the national-led government. And I think it's served the interests of the Labour Party on the other side, and the Greens too. The Greens actually don't support the super city, so their position is one pretty straightforward position. But the Labour Party who do support it, but have allowed people to believe that they are the champions of those who don't. And I think we've all been caught in the middle of that, and what's happened is that people have thought, gosh, we're getting one put across us again, whereas there is an opportunity here, I think it's a shame that we're moving into this new regime, this new setup, not full of aspiration.
Well, we will actually have to take a break now, and when we come back, how's the media trading?